years ago that I finally came back, and I visited several times. And when I was in South Africa, I was in Joburg. We had a center there. And presently, I write. I have some books. I speak. I develop workshops. I travel. I also record music. And I teach more in the context of practical application, and I teach more in the context of like what you could call spiritual self-development. So you take an idea, a concept, and then you apply the concept practically. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, said something which is kind of humorous, but it's true. He said, don't be an armchair philosopher, do something practical. So what's an armchair philosopher? Should I imitate an armchair philosopher? Okay, I have to go back and look at myself if I'm going to be an armchair philosopher. I'm knocking on my picture there. Okay, what's an armchair philosopher? Well, you know, what I think is, yeah, it could be like this, and that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I think we should talk more about it. And, you know, in my opinion, it's really like this. So when Prabhupada says armchair philosopher, he means you're only talking, you're not doing anything. Right? Have you heard that statement before? Armchair philosopher? It's kind of funny. You're in your armchair and you're philosophizing, but practical action, it's just ideas in your head. So what I've tried to do is take spiritual principles and then get them out of the armchair and get them into practical action. Like how you can actually understand this concept in a way that you apply like right now and every moment of your life, not like only in some situations. Now, for today's class, I like to make my classes more interactive. So I'm going to ask you questions. A lot of you are students, right? So you're used to answering questions. Okay. Right now, I want you to think of someone you don't like. And you might say, I love everyone. There's no one I don't like. Well, I'm sure you like some people more than others. It doesn't have to be someone you know. Maybe it's a politician you don't like. Maybe it's that guy in America who runs the country. Maybe you don't like him. It could be anyone. Just for the sake of this exercise, I want to show you something that can help you with relationships. We're talking about conscious relationships. That's the topic of this course. So to begin this course, to make this practical, I want you to think about someone you don't like. And if I go scroll and look at all your faces, then I can tell if you don't like that person, because you'll be like this. Your face is going to look like you just ate a lemon or something. Yeah, when I think, oh, who don't I like? Oh, that one, yeah. Your face will turn like there's a lemon in your mouth. Okay, so now, have you found that person you don't like? And one of you saying, it was hard for me to choose because there were so many. Yeah, all right, well, just choose one. Just choose. I'm not having a hard time finding that person. I'm having a hard time choosing which one. Okay, choose one. Now, here's the exercise. If you have a piece of paper or something you can write on, digital, something, otherwise write in your mind, I would like you to think of some things about that person you can appreciate. And if you think, there's nothing this person is so bad, there's nothing I can appreciate. And if you think like that, still, the assignment is, yes.
Prachi, we have to think about the person whom we don't like, the good qualities of that person.
Yeah, appreciate something about him. 1, 2, 3 things. Appreciate the good about the person you don't like. So you can write it down or you can think about it. And after you do this, shouldn't take long. After you do this, I just want to notice how you feel. How does that make you feel? Someone tell me, how did you feel before you wrote down the 3 things, and how did you feel after? Can you put that in chat? See if I want to see if there was a difference. I'm going to go to the chat. Now, every time I go to the chat, apparently my screen freezes, but it doesn't mean I'm not here. It just means I left my body for a while and I'm coming back. So, but even when I'm out of my body, I can still read the chat. So don't worry, I'm going to go to the chat. And as you have your experience, now you feel sad that you don't like the person, but how did you feel after you appreciated them? Did you feel any different? And then, yeah, when you send to everybody so we can all read it. I feel stupid, meaning what? You feel stupid because you didn't like them? Feel stupid? Feel less judgmental of him than after appreciating? Oh, that's good. Feel guilty after appreciating? Feel a bit better, more understanding of their actions. The person they are. Couldn't appreciate before. That's no. I feel bad because I couldn't appreciate. Good and bad qualities are temporary, transcendental inside of all of us. Mixed emotions. At least they're not all bad. Conflicted. At least not all bad. Yeah. Well, conflicted because you're appreciating someone you don't. Yeah. Appreciating someone you don't like. Yeah, that's a conflicting emotion. There's a reason we're doing this. I don't dislike them as much. Good. One time we did this exercise. We chose a person we resented, and we said, describe appreciate them, and one person said, I can't. It's impossible. I said, what are their good qualities? They don't have any. I can't. It's okay. That's good. I'm going to go out of chat back into my body. That's good. So I think you can all see there's a little different feeling between disliking someone and appreciating someone, obviously, right? And when you appreciate someone, all you've really done is just see that person from a different perspective. You're seeing the same person, but you're seeing them from a different perspective. Correct? Yes? You're looking at the same thing. So we're going to do a little something. Okay, I'm going to show you. We're going to have fun. Is it okay to have fun during this retreat? Is that allowed? We're going to have fun. I'm going to show you something. This is a recorder. This is called a Zoom H5N. You can record like this. You can plug in a microphone here. You can actually do multi-track recording. You can record guitar in here. It has guitar effects. This thing is amazing. It's incredible, this technology. You know, like 20 years ago, this thing, you know what this thing would have cost like 20, 30 years ago? It probably would have cost like $3,000. Now it costs $250. This is amazing. Okay, what did I just do? I gave you a lot of appreciation for this, didn't I? Most of you probably don't even, maybe you've never seen it before. Not sure what it is, what it does. Right? But right now, it's looking good because I've appreciated it. Yes? Yes? Yes or no? Looking good, right? Good review. Good review. Yeah, this thing's amazing. And even though these speakers are small, they actually sound quite good. And it's only $250, and it can record like hours and hours and hours and hours. I use this for recording my lectures, and I use plug-in microphones here and do videos with this. A lot of people use this for doing videos. So you're like looking at this and thinking, wow, this is nice. Okay. Now, what if I do this? See this thing? This is the Zoom, is a piece of junk. Don't spend your money on it. It's a waste of $250. This is like, see these mic? It's plastic. They paint it like it's silver, but it's actually, how can you have a microphone made of plastic? The whole holder is plastic. It's like, it doesn't even sound that good. And for this price, there's so many better things on. This was like compromised, made, who knows where this thing was made, in some little island in the middle of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. So what are we doing? You're looking at the same thing, and now you're looking at it thinking, that thing's a piece of junk, right? Did this change? This did not change. This is the same thing. I didn't do anything to it. It's the same thing, right? What did I do? I changed your perception of it, right? So now you're thinking, oh, this Zoom, I'm not going to buy this. This is a piece of junk. This doesn't work well. It's not worth the price, right? What did I just do? What did I just do? I changed something without changing it by forcing you to change your perception of it. Isn't that interesting? Maybe I wasn't effective in changing your perception, but you have to play along with me. You have to look at it now and think, this thing is horrible. It's plastic microphones, and look how small this screen is. You can hardly see it. You need a magnifying glass. And these buttons, they're just like, it's not intuitive, and there's buttons, but it doesn't say anything. And how do you know what the buttons are for? And you have this big bar here. It's like, why do they put this stupid bar? And then you can't get to the dials. So I'm trying to make the point that how you look at somebody is going to affect your relationship with them, either good or bad. And you're looking at the same person, but you're looking at it a different way. Is that clear? Yes or yes?
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah, okay. You're all awake, right? You're all paying attention. Yeah, okay. So when we're talking about relationships here. So how we perceive someone is often in terms of what we expect of them. So if I expect something of you and you don't live up to that expectation, I will be upset in some way. I'll be let down in some way. I'll be disturbed in some way, correct? So my perception is affecting my relationship based on my expectations of you, based on comparisons to other people like you. And so if we want to improve relationships, one of the most powerful ways to do that, not only for the relationship, but for our own consciousness, is to learn perception. I could see the bad, but I could also see the good. Now here's a fact of life. If we're seeing the bad, that means something's wrong with us. We think, no, I'm seeing the bad because there's something wrong with them. Okay, maybe there is something wrong with them, but is bad the only thing? There's no good in them? Why are you not seeing the good? Isn't it true that sometimes with some people, you only see the bad? You just see them and you think, here comes trouble. And all you see is trouble. You just see this person is bad in so many ways. Okay, I'm sure you've all done that. If you're human. If we have any non-humans here, then maybe if you're non-human, you haven't done it. But I'm assuming you're all human. Raise your hand if you're not human. If you've never done that, you're not human. And if that's true, I'd like to meet you when I come to South Africa. I've never met a non-human yet. Okay. So if that does happen to us, and it does, that we're seeing the bad qualities in someone, and we're neglecting the good qualities, then that takes another person to show me their good qualities. Yeah. So is it possible that with that same person, you could see the good qualities and not the bad qualities? Of course it's possible. Just as we only saw the bad qualities and not the good, it's possible we could see the good, but not the bad. Now, so here's the point. It's not so much about the person, it's more about the person who's perceiving the person. Not so much about this, it's about the perception of this. Yes. So what I would suggest to all of us is that when we're seeing the negative, we should start thinking, okay, is there something wrong with a person, or is the real problem that there's something wrong with me, that I'm seeing the negative? So if I'm criticizing someone, I should think, this is saying a lot about me. I am now perceiving the negative in this person, which is a sign of unconsciousness or low consciousness. I would say the opposite of conscious relationship is not unconscious, it's low consciousness. So now I'm criticizing someone. So am I really talking about that person, or could I reflect and say, I'm really talking about myself, that I have a need to criticize it. I have a problem with perception, that I cannot appreciate this person. And so if ever you're in that situation, reflect on your own need to criticize and understand that's a problem that you're going to need to work through. Like, why do you need to do that? What's going on inside of you that you need to criticize? What's going on inside of you that even though there's good in this person, you don't notice it, or you don't want to notice it? And if someone else notices it, you don't like that. You don't want to hear that. Something that's so funny. Have you ever been in a conversation and somebody's talking about someone you don't like, and they're saying bad things about them? Have you ever been in that conversation? And you're like, did you really? And isn't it that you really like the person because they also don't like the same person you don't like? It's like there's a common bond there. And you just feel like, yes, this is nectar to my ears. They're talking ill about this person. I totally agree, 100%. There's like a resonance there. Makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, right? But what if they're just speaking nicely about that person, but you don't like that person? Makes you feel bad. Like, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? How can you say that? You may not express that, but you feel that. Isn't that interesting? So if we're evolving spiritually, we would naturally be appreciating something about everybody. And you might say, yeah, but this person is bad. Okay, that may be. But my question to you is, do you have to focus on the bad? Why are you focused on it? What's the reason? You want to look in yourself and try to understand. That's important. Yes, they're bad. Also, let's say someone did something wrong. Yes, they did. Why are you focused on that? That's my question to you. Now, in some cases, you may need to be focused on it because you're in a position where you have to do something. But if you're not in a position where you have to do anything, or what they're doing is not hurting anybody, why are you focused on it? When we focus on the negative, it degrades us. Then we become degraded by the person. Sometimes we become controlled by the person because we become upset with them. Why did he have to do that? It's so bad. And we become obsessed with their faults. And so then we end up punishing ourselves because of their faults. We become upset because of their faults. So this is the first point I want to make, that appreciation is really, it's a very powerful way to counteract negativity. And if you You try to force yourself to appreciate. Even when at first you can't really see what to appreciate, you try to force yourself to appreciate. It will shift you out of this negativity. And if you practice it enough, it'll start becoming a habit where you'll see people and appreciate, and you won't notice the negative. And just imagine this. Just imagine for a moment. Maybe some of you are already there. Everyone you see, you appreciate, and you just don't notice their faults, or you notice it, but it doesn't bother you. You're very generous in the sense of it's just accepting. You're very accepting. Oh yes, we all have faults. I have faults also, so it doesn't bother me. I don't get upset. Now, the question may be, why do we get upset when we see other people's faults? Well, sometimes we get upset because we have the same fault. And the fault is upsetting to us, and we don't like to see the fault in another person because it reminds us that we have that fault. Have you ever noticed that? That sometimes you get really upset about somebody doing something because it's what you do and you know you shouldn't be doing it. Or they have a habit or a character trait you also have that's not good and you wish you didn't have. And you would like to give up. And seeing them doing it reminds you that you do it and you don't like it. Have you ever noticed that? And have you ever noticed that sometimes someone does something wrong, it doesn't bother you at all? Because it's not a problem that you have? It's interesting. It's interesting to meditate on. So often we're being reminded of our own faults, and that's why we're getting upset. Okay, I'll answer that question later because that's an exception to what I'm saying. What I'm talking, let me answer that question indirectly now. What I'm talking about here are normal relationships where nobody's being hurt. These are not abusive relationships or violent relationships. Nobody's being damaged per se. It's just normal relationships, normal everyday, good, bad relationships. So we're sometimes seeing something in ourselves in that person, and it bothers us in ourselves, and we've kind of suppressed it. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to deal with it. And then we see it in that person, and it's in our face. It reminds us, I'm like that. And we may not want to admit it, and we get upset. Look at what that person's doing. That's so bad. When in fact, we're doing it, and we're upset because we're doing it. You know that saying, the needle is the sieve, the strainer is finding fault with the needle. Oh, you have a hole. So it's something like that. But the strainer is full of holes. So this is kind of what I'm saying here is, if you are advancing spiritually, you will notice that the tendency to appreciate will be stronger than the tendency to criticize. If you advance even more, you will lose the tendency to criticize. That's a symptom of spiritual advancement. There's different levels. One level is you're criticizing in your mind, but you don't say anything. So you've controlled your words. You've not acted on it. That's better than saying something, because when you say something, then it ruins the relationship and it hurts the person. So one level is to say it. A more controlled level is you don't say it. You just think it, but at least you didn't say it. And then a higher level is you don't even notice it, but you notice the good. So now what I would like to suggest to all of you, all of us, is that try beginning right now for the rest of your life, or as many lives as you have left in the material world. Try now to appreciate others as much as possible. It doesn't have to be verbalized necessarily. Just try to appreciate them as much as possible. When you see them, try to see what's good. Don't try to see what's bad. Try to develop this habit. try to develop this mindset. And then also you can verbalize it. Thank you for doing that. That was great. I really appreciate that, etc. What will happen when you do that is it'll start to become a habit. And so that mentality of appreciation is strengthened the more you do it. Just like the mentality to criticize is strengthened the more you do it. And it's a very, very important point, because as it is said, practice makes perfect. So the more you practice anything, the more expert you become at it. And so similarly, the more we criticize, the more expert we become at criticizing. In other words, the more the tendency to criticize will be there. The more we appreciate, then you're starting to develop that habit. So appreciation becomes more natural. Now, the beautiful thing about learning how to appreciate is it forces you to see the other side. It forces you to see the good that you maybe didn't see before, which is extremely important in relationships, because if you only see the bad, how can you have a good relationship? Because if you only see the bad, then the relationship degrades. If you see the good, the relationship is elevated. If you can honor the person, appreciate them. You know, every bad relationship, when it starts degrading, you know what happens? Criticism takes over, and criticism becomes constant. And then it morphs into a higher stage of blame and contempt, where you just start putting the person down. That's what destroys relationships. And this is scientifically studied, that where there's constant criticism, constant blame, constant contempt, the relationship cannot exist, at least not in a healthy state, if at all. So now I'm going to go to your questions now. I have a lot more we could say, but time I am not, so I can't create more time. You know, we have an hour, right? If I were time, I would stretch it, and we'd go in my time machine and we'd have to. But I've given like whole workshops for days on this. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chat. I might freeze, and but you can hear me. And okay. So there's a devotee named Jayananda. And so Jivana was saying he only saw the good. It's true. I was with Jayananda. I never heard him criticize anybody. Isn't that amazing? Imagine you're with somebody. You like live with them. I lived for months with him in the same temple. And I never heard him say anything bad about anybody. There are people I know who it's almost like I never heard them say anything good about anybody. And there are other people I know who I've never heard them say anything bad about anybody. And the ones who have never said anything bad about anybody are always happier than the ones who are always saying bad about everybody, isn't it? If you're always speaking negative, you will develop a very obviously a very negative attitude about the person you're speaking negatively about. So be careful, because speaking negatively about a person just incites your negativity towards that person. Now, if you're a devotee or you're practicing spiritual life, it may not be that you want close relationships with everyone, but at least you want relationships which are decent, which are not negative. So that's a very important thing. I may not really love everybody, because we're all different, and some people resonate more with me than others. But as those who are devotees or want to be devotees or practicing spiritual life, we don't want to hate anybody, because if we hate anybody, we're really degrading ourselves. Even if they're hateable, well, then hate the sin, not the sinner. Or hate the sin and love the sinner. So this is a very important principle. I may not admire everything you do, but if I hate you, I degrade myself. If what you do makes me angry, in the sense of anger that degrades me, then I'm allowing your actions to degrade me. So this is very important, because this often happens. We allow the actions of others to degrade us. So maybe someone is acting in a way which is out of my own integrity and I wouldn't want to be close to them. But we should not develop hatred. We should always be the well-wisher of everyone. This is a spiritual principle. And my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, his spiritual master said, we should always desire the greatest good for our worst enemy. So this is a spiritual principle, a very high principle, almost impossible for us to achieve. But still, the principle is there, that if you're cultivating spiritual life, you can't allow negative things like criticism, hatred, resentment, and so forth to sit in your heart. It destroys, it eats up your spiritual progress. You make progress on one hand and then you eat it up, and so you go down. So that's an important principle. And so so then we have the question. It's hard to read all your names, it's so small. Browen, is that it? If I could read your name, my eyes are still not so bad.
It's so, Bronwyn.
Bronwyn? Close. Bronwyn? Okay, Bronwyn. Sorry about that. No, my eyes are bad. What if that
no,
person,
that's okay.
Not so bad for my age. What if that person is hurting someone you care about? Yeah, then that's different. But don't hate them, hate the sin. That's the point. And then do something. And if you're angry, that anger should be benevolent anger. Anger which is not going to destroy you or anybody, but anger which will be used as an inspiration to resolve the situation. If you can resolve it, sometimes you can't. So yes, we should be definitely concerned if someone is hurting someone we care about, and try to protect that person and try to reason with that person and explain things if you can. That's another kind of relationship skill. But the point I'm making is, don't allow yourself to become damaged when these things happen by allowing resentment and hatred and envy and so forth to develop within you, because then you're allowing that person to destroy you. That person becomes the catalyst for your own destruction. So that we want to avoid. And that is a problem. That is a very big problem. How to travel through life and see bad things, like you're describing, like someone being hurt, how to travel through life and see that, but not react in a way that they react. Because you see, the problem is a lot of times someone will do something bad, and in our mind we think, well, I'm justified now to do something bad to them because they're doing bad things to other people. So now their action ends up degrading us. So we allow ourselves to compromise our own values by saying, well, I can do what they're doing to get back at them. We don't want to do that. That's the trap. If you're trying to cultivate spiritual practice, you have principles to follow. And within the parameters of those principles, you apply solutions. You don't degrade yourself to the level of some other person's degrading activities. Otherwise, you're finding fault with them. It's not justifiable, because you end up kind of coming back with the same consciousness with which they acted. So then you have two wrongs don't make a right. So you always want to stay above it. Concern, yeah, we should be concerned for sure. But how you react is going to be the difference between where your consciousness resides. That is the point. So this is something we all face in life, is like reacting to difficult situations. So the more you're spiritually evolved, the more your reactions are going to come from, you could say, understanding, tolerance, compassion, control. You'll be angry, but you'll be controlled. You'll take that anger, and then you'll use that anger to come up with solutions which would not destroy anybody, but will resolve the issue. So there's a lot to be said about it, but I think that's a general idea. And so Radha Vinod says, what you're describing sounds like how parents raise their kids by trying to not let the children make the same mistakes they made. Yeah, of course, the best way to raise a kid is to be the example. Yeah, and if you appreciate your kids, then they'll feel good about themselves. And if you ever have to correct your kids, don't make them feel like they're bad, just make them understand what they did was wrong. It had nothing to do with who they are. So Nirvana says, I read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's statement that you must not criticize devotees at all due to the damage created, except if you are in a position of authority, and even then with purity of heart, but to not do it. So how to manage a spiritual institution. Then I think the way we have to deal with abuses, if they exist, discrepancies we have to deal with. We have to deal with problems for sure. It's the same answer. If you see something and you want to resolve it, and you're coming from it totally from a platform of concern, you're not coming from the platform of I want to put this person down. I'm criticizing to get the satisfaction of pushing myself up and pushing this person down, which is often where criticism comes from. But I'm solely pointing out the situation with the motive to help, and there's no resentment or hatred or real critical nature within me. Yes, that's the perfect way to approach it. And I would say, not only the perfect way, that's the only way to approach it. We don't want to approach it any other way. Otherwise, it goes back to what I was saying. That person's activities end up degrading you. Okay, Rukmini says, relationships are complex. Different natures work together, and we inevitably clash. Is this a lack of appreciation? If I ignore it or just accept it, then I may not be true to my nature perspective. It's a little difficult to answer this in general because you're probably thinking of something specific. And if I answer in general, it may not cover the specifics. But if you want to be specific, you can let me know. But you'd have to tell me via audio. So if I'll try to answer it, and if I'm getting a little off because it's not relating to your situation, you can just pop in with audio and tell me what you mean. Different natures work together, and we inevitably clash. Not always. Well, it depends how close you are and how much you're working together. Okay, clash. In other words, we disagree. Okay. Is this a lack of appreciation? No, it's a lack of nature. It's because of nature. But it could be a lack of appreciation in some situations because you could be focused on everything you don't like about the person. And perception, how do you see the person? You see yourself as better. So it could be due to your own inner prejudice. I think I'm better. I'm more well educated than you. You should do what I say. You're not as smart as I am. I have 3 degrees. It could be so many things. I'm better at this. I'm smarter than you. So the clashing, it can come from so many areas. Lack of appreciation could be one. Nature could be another. Prejudice could be another. My need to control could be another. I'm right. I'm right, which means you're wrong. That could be another. If I ignore it or just accept it, then I may not be true to my nature. I'm not sure what you mean by ignore. Are you saying ignore the clash? Or the clash is due to my nature? Well, it's true that some people will not do well working together. It's just they have different natures. I worked with someone who was much different from me. And sometimes it was difficult because if we're going to do something, I kind of think of it in my mind. I go, okay, let's do this. And it doesn't take me long, kind of figure it out. Okay. And his nature was not to talk about it. Okay, let's talk about it. And what about this? What about that? And it could be, after like 2 hours, I'm like, that's why I have no hair now, because so it was it was really difficult. So as as like friends, we were okay, but like working together, we were so different. It was like, I can't work with you because, and then like 3 days later, he'll say like, you know, I think what you said is right. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know. We could have saved 3 days. I already knew it was right. So, sometimes it's nature's clash. And so in those situations, sometimes you just want to be a little distant. And then at a distance, you can have a good relationship. And your natures may be so much that it's hard to appreciate because you think so differently. So you get some distance and go, okay, I can appreciate because now what you're doing doesn't affect me because it's so far. Yeah, well, you do that in your circle. I do this in my circle, and we're just separated from one another. So I can look at it from a distance and it's okay. So yeah, you can't ignore your nature. And so sometimes it's just you can't work with certain people. That's normal. But you don't hate them. You don't criticize them. You don't lose your appreciation. That's my point. That's where the problem is. If I mature emotionally, if I mature spiritually, probably I'll be able to work better with people. If I get over my ego where I always have to be in control and be right, yes, I'll be able to work better with people for sure. But sometimes it's just we're different. Let's say we both are really good at what we do and we both have a nature to be leaders and we come together, we're just clashing because we have different ideas and we don't see eye to eye and we're both leaders. So just from a practical point of view, it may be necessary that we just separate and then we can have a better relationship. As they say, high fences make good neighbors. So sometimes it's like that. We can have a great relationship because we're on other sides of the room. Okay, we're going to try to get through these questions in 14 minutes. I don't know. Would it be acceptable to distance yourself from those who possess qualities you don't want in your life? Like anger, yes. Well, as long as you're not married to them. How, or they're not your mother-in-law, living in the same house. How would you create appropriate barriers without insulting them? See, it's easier with people in general and friends. It's harder with people you're living with and closer to. The easy answer is just tell them that it's difficult, it's difficult for me to be around you when you're angry, or it's difficult for me to be around you when you're, but depending on your relationship, that could offend them. So if that's like your father and you tell him and you're like 20 years old and he's like 70, that's going to be hard for him to hear. So the first answer to your question is yes, it's okay to distance yourself because you want to maintain your sanity or you want to maintain your consciousness. Sometimes it's necessary to distance yourself, but then you have the sensitivity of the relationship. Can you talk about it? Or can you distance, and if you can't talk about it, can you distance yourself without talking about it? Can you just kind of fade out of the picture? And, or just like be distant to the point they ask you, why are you so distant? And then it opens up the opportunity to talk about it. And you have to learn how to talk about it without criticizing, without offending, just expressing your own needs. Well, it's difficult for me in these situations. It affects me this way. It's hard for me to handle. So in spiritual life also, you want to surround yourself with people who are supporting you by their words, by their actions. And if you're around people who are degrading you, you're going to find it very, very difficult and you're going to want to get some space between them. It's just when it's family, it's more difficult, but you're probably all old enough to run away from home now, or you already have. So that sometimes that's what young people do. They may find a home situation not compatible for what they're trying to do, and so they decide to move. Run for the hills is always a solution. That's what I did. So, good association, being with people who uplift you is very important. If you want to advance spiritually and you're not in that good association, yeah, it's going to be really difficult. Okay, we have a question from, I can't say, Avrox? Anyway, I can't.
The Avron.
Avron, wow. If I had glasses. Well, that was close. Avron. Okay. Sorry. What should we do if we hear others speaking bad about others and being offensive? Beat them up. Sometimes if we inform them, it might undermine our relationship and they're not in a position. A lot of devotees ask this question and I say, as soon as you hear that, tell them, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. And you're all laughing, but I'm totally serious. Because like you're saying, you can't tell them, listen, I don't want to hear this, because they'll become offended. This is bothering me. I don't like hearing criticism. So every time they're criticizing, immediately say, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. After a while, they're going to figure out what's going on. And they'll put 2 and 2 together. And so the injunction from the Vedas is, yeah, you should leave. Because if you hear, you know what happens when you hear negative about a person? It destroys your perception of them. It negafies. That's not a word. Negative. Well, we just made up a new word. It negafies. It makes your perception of them very negative the more you hear. You start to dislike them the more you hear criticism of them. And even if you say, no, that's not what happens, I like them, it still affects you, believe me. When you hear bad things about people, even the ones you like, and even like you're saying here, I don't want to hear it, by your hearing it, it affects your heart. It does something negative to you. So the injunction is, when I said kill them, well, in some societies, that's what they would do. We're not going to do that. But the injunction is leave. Convince them that what they're saying is not true. Convince them to stop talking or leave. That's what we should do. At least if you want to maintain your consciousness, that's what the Shastras, the Vedas say. What happens if a husband mentally abuses his wife? How should the wife react? Should she keep quiet and appreciate the good qualities? What do you mean by mentally abused? You mean verbally? Because mentally means, oh, she's being mentally abused. So that means by what he says and how he acts, I assume. Well, I'm glad you asked this question. Yes, you should appreciate his good qualities, but at the same time, if you find that the behavior of another person is degrading you, disturbing you to a point you don't function well, or it's damaging you in some way, psychologically, it could be damaging in a way that you just don't function well. You're becoming depressed. You're losing self-esteem. You feel guilty about doing things which you really need to do, or right things. Yeah, to tolerate that generally is not a good idea, because now you're using tolerance as a means of you're tolerating something that shouldn't be tolerated. So tolerance is a very important quality, but then you don't want to tolerate something that ends up degrading you. So, my answer would be, well, if you can tolerate it, and just understand that that's the nature of your husband, and you can't really talk about it to him because you've tried and he doesn't listen or he doesn't agree. But if you haven't tried to talk, then talk. And if you've talked, it doesn't work, yes, you could try to tolerate, but I wouldn't tolerate to the point where you can't tolerate, to the point that it starts to demean you and it's bad for you. That would be wrong, because you'll come out the other end of your marriage maybe very damaged. So that's something to consider. I don't know your situation, but my advice always is first talk about it, or go to a marriage counselor and then talk about what's going on with them, and try to get some good advice, good direction, and let your husband know how it's disturbing you. Okay. So, how much time do we have left?
We just have 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other live questions from anybody.
I have a thought for you. All right. I want you to take this thought with you. You can still ask questions, but I want you to take this thought with you. Imagine you lived with yourself. So the other person that you live with, you just lived in a flat, maybe a 2-bedroom flat, and you lived in one room, and the other person was maybe had a different face, but it was exactly you. It was you. And so the question you want to ask yourself is, what would I not like about living with myself? If I had to live with myself, what would I not like about it? Like if the other, or if you're in a family, and let's say you live in a house, there's your mother, father, your sister, brother, your uncle, your aunt, your grandmother. If everybody were exactly like me, what would I not like about living in that house? And I know that's a hard question to answer. You could say, if everyone in the world were like me, what would I like about the world? If every Hare Krishna devotee were just like me, what wouldn't I like about every Hare Krishna devotee? You can, but the point is, this is something I just felt very strongly about very early on in my life, that our existence affects other people. And sometimes we have negative effect on people and we don't even realize it. So we have to kind of sometimes objectify that by getting out and looking at ourselves as if we were looking at another person. So I say, okay, what would you like about, look at yourself and think, now you're out of your body, you're another person looking at yourself. What wouldn't you like about living with yourself? And then you start to realize, okay, this is how I affect people. Maybe I'm very introverted and I don't talk to anybody. Maybe I'm totally extroverted and I bother everybody. Maybe I'm very intolerant. I get upset easily when I see one crumb on the floor. I start screaming, whatever it is. And then you start thinking, okay, if I wouldn't like to live with a person like that, then I need to, think, how is this affecting the people I live with? So that way you start to become more objective about where you need to improve and how what you're doing is affecting other people. That's a very important thing to do in relationships. To always be thinking, how are my actions affecting others? Maybe you're always late. We say, okay, we're gonna eat at this time. You're always late. You're always 15 minutes late. Like we can set our watch 15 minutes late, and we know you're gonna walk in right on the 15-minute dot. We know that. And think, well, how does that affect other people? Because they're all sitting there waiting for me every day. They always have to wait for me. So that's a nice meditation, isn't it? Not an easy one. Not easy. Yes.
We have more questions, which are really good. There's just 2 more in the chat. Balaram Singh has asked a really good one.
I see. Balaram. By only seeing the good qualities in someone may make us naive and vulnerable towards possible dangers that may come, breaking of trust, etc. Since we are in the material world, there's danger at every step. Any suggestions? Yeah. So I think if this question, I could kind of summarize the answer of everything we've talked about by answering this question. There is a saying, see with one good eye and see with one bad eye. So that means, see the pros and see the cons. So the point was that if there is something bad, as we were talking about, that you see that bad in terms of how to protect yourself or protect others from that. So I noticed that without um, allowing me to lose total respect for that person if it's only one thing that they've done. Or sometimes a person may, have a beautiful history of doing wonderful things for decades, and then they make one big mistake, and that big mistake becomes the only thing we see. So this one teacher, he put a dot on a whiteboard, this huge whiteboard, and he put a dot, and he asked the students, raise your hand, tell me, what do you see? Everybody said, I see the dot. And he said, that's the problem. The person does one thing wrong, and that's what we see. So we have to be a little careful. So I don't know the context of what you're talking about, so I can only give some general idea. But yes, we have to be aware if a person is obviously dangerous, then there is this concept of respect from a distance. Like, okay, this person is a devotee of Krishna, I respect that, but they did something wrong, and I have to be aware of that, and I have to deal with that, because it could infringe upon the well-being of myself, my family, and others. So yes, that's there. But again, as I was saying before, we have to do it in a way that we don't degrade ourselves, where we become angry, resentful, and so forth, unless that anger and resentment is actually uplifting us, inspiring us to remedy the situation, maybe inspiring us to help him or help others who've been hurt by him. So that's the idea. I hope that answers it. But you're all thinking of like practical situations. Okay, the next question is similar. We appreciate people a lot. Sometimes they tend to take advantage of us. Yeah. I appreciate you, but don't take advantage. There's two things I would say. One thing is appreciation is good, so we should do it. But then you may have to adjust accordingly, because you might feel like, yeah, if I appreciate this person too much, it goes to their head, they become arrogant, and they start to treat me like I'm their slave or something. Yeah, okay, you have to take that into consideration. So then you might have to evolve more to this level of, okay, I understand they're challenged in certain ways. So my appreciation is more internal. Appreciation is really, from my experience, appreciation is really an internal purifier for us more than anything. And of course, it inspires other people generally to be appreciated. In this case, maybe it degrades them. But for us, it's really helpful. So if you can appreciate people, even if it doesn't work for them, just keep that appreciation internal and then moderate your appreciation, because you don't want them to become arrogant. And so Jivana says, doesn't mean appreciating good qualities doesn't mean we have to become naive or allow them to walk over us. We don't give up our intelligence. We simply focus on the good they have. Well, maintaining boundaries. Yeah, the word is boundaries. Maintain boundaries. Yeah. And this is all, you see what it is. If we kind of put this in context, we're traversing a path within this world, and there are many ways we could be sidetracked. And so the bad qualities of another person are one of the common, and maybe one of the best ways to be sidetracked from the path. So we just have to be careful how we deal with those in a way that we don't become sidetracked, we don't become degraded. At the same time, if we need to take action to protect ourselves or others, we do, but we do it within a context which will be beneficial for everyone as far as possible, and we won't allow ourselves to become degraded by it. That's the idea. And so that, every situation is going to be different. I had a question here. We don't have time. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? You write down, you could do this after the class. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? Or you can write this in the chat, Priya. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? You write down, I want to be treated with respect, understanding, affection. I don't want to be criticized. I don't want to be condemned. I don't want to be blamed. You write all those things down. And then you look at each one of those qualities after you write them down and evaluate yourself. How well do you do those? That's a good exercise. That's a really good exercise. That'll help you a lot. The things you want in the other person, evaluate how well you do it. And generally, if you do it, they'll do it. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? Write down the qualities. And then for each quality, evaluate yourself, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you exhibit those qualities or practice those qualities. I want someone who understands me. Scale of 1 to 10, how well do I understand that person? Or how well do I understand? It could be in general, how well do I understand people who have relationships with me? So that's the idea. Good exercise. Take it with you. This exercise, what would it be like to live with other people? Try to, and the people that you have difficult times with, there's a lot of negativity there, try to appreciate. And the last thing I'll throw out, which is like opening Pandora's box for a whole nother workshop, is if you have, issues with self-hatred or demeaning yourself, you need to do this exercise of appreciation. You need to appreciate yourself. So you need to write the things down that you like about yourself. So you can make a note of that, Priya. For those who need more forgiveness, or are dealing with berating themselves a lot, or shame, or can't forgive themselves, they need to write down what they appreciate about themselves. That's important. That will help a lot. Just as it helps if you have resentment towards another person, it helps if you have resentment towards yourself to appreciate yourself. Because it's important to feel good about yourself, because however you feel about yourself is how you tend to feel about others and how you tend to deal about others. So if you're not happy, how are you going to make others happy? If you're prejudiced, how are you going to help others transcend their own prejudice? You'll be prejudiced towards them. Then how are they going to learn? If you're prejudiced towards yourself, if you don't like yourself, if you don't forgive yourself, you'll tend to take that out and deal with other people that way. So that's why, working on yourself in that way is very important. Is that okay? Is that super okay?
Thank you so much, Mahatma Prabhu. We've run out of time, but I think everyone will agree that this was really, really nourishing and what we all needed to hear. We'll post Mahatma Prabhu's, oh wow, Priya Kishore is very quick with the presentation.
Yeah, there's your homework. There's your homework. You got homework. Okay. And you'll post this also, right? Okay. Yes?
Yes. We will also share all of the everything into our WhatsApp group after this call.
Great. Fantastic. Super. Okay. Fantastic. It was nice being with you all. And hopefully sooner than later, we'll see you live, face to face, and in person. Then you can come up to me and say, I was on that retreat on Zoom back in April. And I'll go, all right, fantastic. We're digital friends. We're social media friends. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mahatma Prabhu. We hope that you can come to South Africa very soon. We miss you.
Yeah, I'd love it. It's one of my favorite places. But I have to come in the right season. And now getting into the cold season. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.